Hey guys, tonight we drift into the barely lit apartment of a misfit coder, where the air smells faintly of reheated lentils, half dreams and burnt coffee. There's a cracked second-hand monitor perched on 2 stacked textbooks, a chair that squeaks like a nervous intern, and sticky notes multiplying like rabbits across the wall. Somewhere in the corner, a Wi-Fi router blinks like it's trying to send Morse code to a better universe. You might be cozy in bed now, wrapped in your favorite blanket, maybe even brushing sleep off your shoulders like dust. But let's be honest, if you tried to start a billion-dollar software company from this shoebox space, you probably wouldn't survive 2 weeks, especially not with that lava lamp of a cash flow chart. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it? I love hearing how far these stories travel while you drift off. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand in the warm glow of the monitor, listening to the gentle clicking of keys as he types. There's something oddly calming about watching someone code in silence, no rush, no meetings, just logic and possibility. He's not a prodigy, not by startup standards. No Stanford hoodie, no Y Combinator sticker. Just a guy with an underwhelming GPA and a deep discomfort with being told what to do. He works full-time as a freelance bug fixer for random legacy systems. It's not glamorous. Sometimes he gets paid in Amazon gift cards. Once, in a particularly cryptic contract, he was offered a box of dehydrated mangoes. He took it because mangoes don't overdraft. But in between debugging nightmare PHP files, he's quietly building something else. A dashboard tool for freelance designers. It's half-baked, held together by duct tape and Stack Overflow comments. And he has exactly 0 users. Still, every night, he opens that code base with the reverence of a monk unrolling a sacred scroll. Line by line, he rewrites logic that no one will ever notice. There's no promise it will succeed. In fact, all signs suggest it won't. Delayed gratification is the whisper in the background here. It's the financial principle that separates impulse from impact. Our guy. He doesn't own much. He drives a car that makes 3 different noises just to start. But he's planting seeds, slowly, quietly, in the dark. And sure, people still argue whether patience is a virtue or just socially acceptable procrastination. Economists can't agree. Some say compounding rewards require decades. Others say the system's rigged and early movers win everything. But he just codes. He's not trying to impress Twitter. He's not optimizing for virality. He's optimizing for something most people can't even define: quiet utility. You look around his space. There's a milk crate of receipts under the desk, a whiteboard with diagrams that look like a wizard tried to explain taxes, and a digital to-do list titled "Eventually." That's the vibe. Not urgent, just eventual. You spot a book on the floor, The Millionaire next door. It's got water damage and a coffee ring on the cover. Classic. That book's entire thesis: wealth doesn't wear Gucci. It wears jeans, drives a 12-year-old Toyota, and pays itself first. There's something comforting about that, right? About success that doesn't scream. You lean in as he scrolls through a spreadsheet titled Runway Calc, optimistic-ish.xlsx. It estimates how long he can go without a real paycheck. Best case, 6 months. Worst case, 2 weeks and a prayer. Somewhere in between, there's magic or bankruptcy. Here's your first quirky anecdote for tonight in the 1500s. Spanish monks in Central America used cocoa beans as currency. That's right, chocolate as money. You could buy a rabbit for 10 beans or a concubine for 100. Makes you wonder if some altcoin ideas are just very old snacks in disguise. Back in the room, you hear him talking to himself. If it doesn't work, I'll freelance harder. That's not exactly a pitch deck slogan, but it's real, and maybe that's the point. Maybe the start of every real SaaS empire doesn't feel like empire building. Maybe it just feels like a person trying to make something a little better without asking for permission. His first user hasn't arrived. His code isn't elegant. His bank account flirts with empty like it's a lifestyle. But there's momentum now. A quiet click, click, click of keys that echo into the night. And here you are, floating beside it. Eyes heavier than before. Heart a little slower. There's no big win yet. Just a whisper of what might be possible if you keep going, even when no one's clapping. Especially when no one's clapping. So you stay there for a bit longer, letting the hum of that old desktop fan mix with your breathing. Tomorrow, things might break. But tonight, the code compiles. And that's enough. You're still there, drifting beside the blinking monitor when an email arrives with a subject line that says, "It all, excited to bring you on board." It's from a mid-sized tech company that's been quietly stalking his GitHub commits. They're offering him a stable back-end role, full benefits, $110K a year, and get this, a dental plan that includes free whitening. You'd think he'd celebrate. You'd think he'd finally vacuum the place. But instead he blinks at the email like it's a phishing attempt. He doesn't reply. Not right away. Not the next day either. In fact, you glide through the next 72 hours as the offer rots quietly in his inbox like a very polite mold. He doesn't decline it. He just lets it sit. Like leftover spaghetti, he's not a rebel. Not really. More like allergic to being on someone else's Slack channel. It's not the job itself, it's the meetings, the jargon, the slow death of agency. He makes a list in his notebook. One column, reasons to take the job. The other, reasons to bet on the dashboard. Under the job column, money, security, dental under the dashboard, control, purpose, more time in sweatpants. That's not a fair fight. But you already know which side wins. This is his dashboard story after all. And who needs dental when you drink instant coffee through a straw to avoid staining? Here's the financial principle breathing beneath this choice opportunity cost. Every yes is 1,000 quiet no's. When you choose the salary, you give up the chaos and magic of building your own thing. When you choose the chaos, we'll say goodbye to dental, I guess. You float above his desk as he opens a clean terminal window. A blink, a breath. He deletes the offer email. There's no dramatic music, just the soft clatter of keys. It's like watching someone turn down a golden ticket because they'd rather build their own chocolate factory from scratch. And speaking of chocolate factories, did you know that in 2006, a man in California tried to pay for a used Honda entirely in Hershey's Kisses, claimed it was a performance art experiment on fiat currency. The seller declined, but Hershey's still sent him coupons for free chocolate. So in a roundabout way, the stunt paid dividends, kind of. you ease into a moment of uncertainty. Did our coder make the right call? He just ghosted a six-figure job in an industry where burnout is a casual Slack emoji. Economists still argue over the merits of bootstrapping versus traditional employment. Some say independence is priceless. Others say it's a myth sold by people who forgot how terrifying medical bills are. There's no clear winner, only trade-offs. Still, you hover over his shoulder as he sketches out a new pricing page on a paper napkin. It's barely legible, but to him, it's a blueprint. Later that night, while you drift between dream and half-conscious curiosity, he stands in the glow of his fridge, drinking almond milk straight from the carton, staring into the distance like a prophet without a prophecy. He mutters tears. Maybe a personal plan, then a team plan. Something with analytics. It's not revolutionary, but it's something, and that's enough. You follow him back to his desk, past laundry piles and empty La Croix cans. He sits. He codes. Again, the fan spins slowly. The router blinks. The world outside moves fast, but in this room, time breathes deeper. By walking away from certainty, he stepped into the strangest kind of wealth, the kind that accrues slowly in courage and conviction, the kind that doesn't hit your bank account. Yet, and you're still beside him, watching, feeling the rhythm of someone not chasing success but luring it softly with consistency. This isn't the climax. It's barely the second act, but it's where the story quietly changes shape, where the world's noise fades and the small voice inside says, "Keep building." You let your breath match the fan's hum. Eyes soft, shoulders loose. There's no rush now. The job is gone. The dashboard remains. And so do you. Somewhere around 2:15 a.m., you're hovering above him again. The room smells like a mix of ambition ramen seasoning and warm laptop plastic. He's staring at a blank browser window titled Hello World and sighing the way people do when they realize they've accidentally made the world's least exciting landing page. It's launch day, not that anyone's watching. He's triple-checked the deploy scripts. The payment processor is wired up, kind of. The login works mostly. And the dashboard itself, let's just say it's functionally minimal. The color palette screams default. The font is a Helvetica whisper. Still, he deploys. He refreshes. Nothing explodes. No sign-ups either. You drift beside him as he opens a celebratory can of sparkling water and makes a note in his Notion Docker. Launch 1:48 a.m. Pacific. V1, feelings, Failure rarely feels cinematic. More often it feels like quiet disappointment and a slightly bloated to-do list. But here's the financial principle woven into this sleepy, scene-sunk cost fallacy. Just because you've poured 400 hours into building something doesn't mean it's valuable. But most people cling tighter the more they've sunk in. You can almost hear the whisper, "I can't quit, now I'm too invested." He resists that whisper. Sort of. The next day, he rewrites the onboarding flow. He tweaks the copy. He even tries a cold email campaign that results in one polite unsubscribe and one reply that just says, "PLs, never email again." But instead of spiraling, he writes it down in a growing folder called Lessons. Lesson Narcure 27. Don't use Comic Sans in a pricing email, even ironically. And here's a quirky money tale to sweeten your descent into dreams. In ancient Yap Island culture, people used giant stone discs as currency, some the size of small cars. When ownership transferred, the stones weren't moved. Everyone just agreed on who owned them. One stone even sank in the ocean during transport, and they still used it as legal tender. Invisible money long before blockchain. Go figure. Back in the present, our misfit coder has turned off his monitor. He lies on the floor, arms splayed like a defeated starfish, staring at a ceiling crack shaped suspiciously like a dollar sign. Maybe I'll pivot, he whispers to nobody. Maybe. Or maybe he's already closer than he thinks. You hover at the edge of sleep now, watching the quiet spiral of self-doubt. It's soft, familiar, but he doesn't let it win. Not fully. Instead, he makes tea. Some strange herbal blend a friend swore would reduce startup cortisol. You're skeptical, but the smell is nice. Floral. Grounding. He pulls up a YouTube tutorial on how to get your first SaaS user without ads. The narrator sounds unnervingly cheerful, somewhere between a cult leader and a real estate agent. But he listens anyway. Economists still debate whether solo founders are economically rational. Some argue the returns are too low, the risk too high. Others point out that some of the most enduring companies in history began with one stubborn person and a text editor. It's messy data, but that's the charm. He adds a feedback form to the app. He posts a link in an obscure subforum for freelancers. He even asks his cousin in marketing if she'd try it, though she replies with a TikTok link and a maybe later. That night, he checks analytics again. 0. Still 0. Then, while you float between awareness and dream state, it happens. One sign up. Just one. No name. Just an email sandwichmaker27something.net. It's probably a spam bot, but still, it's something. A whisper from the void. He lets out a laugh that sounds more like a breath he's been holding for weeks. Well, hello world, he says with a grin. You feel it too, this moment that barely makes a ripple in the universe, but sends shockwaves through his little living room. The first domino didn't fall, it blinked. And that's enough. He opens a new file, Milestone Tracker. First user today. Unknown origin. Probably a sandwich enthusiast. And then, for no clear reason, he high-fives the wall. Sleep moves through you like honey, now thick and slow. There's no climax here, no news story, no VC term sheet, just one soft click in a long night of silence. But maybe that's where all real stories begin, not with fireworks, but with a nudge. And maybe, just maybe that one user will tell a friend, and that friend will tell 3 more. Or maybe not. But for tonight, it doesn't matter. The code is live. The failure didn't kill him. And somewhere out there, someone is exploring a dashboard built in a room with no AC and a flickering bulb. You smile as you float above it, all wrapped in the weightless truth of quiet beginnings. The next morning arrives like a soft knock on a door. Hesitant, polite, almost too gentle to wake him. But he's already up, of course. Coders like him rarely sleep past dawn, not out of discipline, but because their brains are constantly chewing on unsolved bugs like mental bubble gum. You glide next to him as he rubs his eyes, one hand already reaching for the keyboard. The monitor lights up the room with a glow that could either be holy or just very blue. The first thing, he checks analytics. That lone user, SandwichMaker27, has logged in again. Twice. And now there's another user. Chloe UX Design. Real name, maybe. Bot, possibly. Miracle. He's not ruling it out. He opens his tiny Slack channel, currently home to no one but himself, and writes, Users 2. conversion rate incalculable, mood cautiously caffeinated. Then he makes a coffee using a French press with a cracked handle and what can only be described as pre-apocalyptic beans. It tastes like regret and ambition. Perfect. Here's tonight's financial principle for you to drift off with: iteration over perfection. It's one of the hardest truths in business and life. The idea that success doesn't come from getting it right the first time, but from staying in the game long enough to learn what right even looks like. He opens up the dashboard editor, staring at the color picker like it owes him rent. He tweaks the green. It's not quite the right green, not yet, but it's better. You watch as he adds a live chat widget. Then he tests it by sending a message to himself. "Hi, can I help you? Yes, I'm very confused. Me too. Thanks for your honesty. Progress." Somewhere in between font updates and bug squashing, a third user signs up. Then a fourth. You'd miss it if you blinked. But he notices. Of course he notices. These are not just users. These are pixels of proof. You hover behind him as he opens a spreadsheet labeled Pricing Strategy. Ideas that won't scare people. He lists a free tier, a 7-month solo tier, and a 25-month Team Magic tier. Why Team Magic? He doesn't know. It just sounds cozy. Now, here's your offbeat money tale. For tonight, during the Great Depression, certain towns in the U.S. printed local currencies backed by trust and IOUs. They weren't legal tender, just paper vouchers with smiley faces and handshakes. They worked. People traded pies, piano lessons, and plumbing fixes, all on belief alone. Economists today call it script money. We call it community on a napkin. Back in the living room, our misfit coder emails the first users a thank you note. It's awkward, earnest. He signs off with, "Thanks for being here. You're literally my entire user base." And then, in parentheses, PS, "Let me know if anything breaks," which it probably will. It's charming in the way only someone who's terrified can be. Vulnerability wrapped in humor. Customers don't always love perfect founders. They love real ones, and yet the doubt creeps in. You feel it under his skin like a soft, buzzing mosquito of insecurity. What if this is just a fluke? What if the users churn tomorrow? What if he's spending all this time building a castle on sand? Economists still argue whether early traction actually predicts long-term success. Some say it's all about initial momentum. Others say those first 100 users are a mirage, that product market fit is more like product market luck. The data is fuzzy. The dreams are fuzzier. He lies back on the rug, stares at the ceiling again. This time, the dollar sign crack looks more like a question mark. He whispers I should be marketing more. But instead, he adds a new feature keyboard shortcuts. And here's the twist someone notices. Chloe UX Design sends him a DM. "Hey, those shortcuts. Super helpful. Thanks for thinking like a designer." He stares at the message like it's a handwritten note from the universe. It's not viral growth, it's not investor buzz, but it's signal, tiny, glimmering signal. Enough to keep going, enough to breathe easier for another night. You drift with him into the quiet, carried gently by a rhythm that now feels oddly familiar. Build, tweak, doubt, repeat. The same cycle that forged so many forgotten giants. The fan clicks softly overhead. A soft breeze carries the scent of toasted logic and half-hope. Your eyelids lower. He doesn't know what comes next. Neither do you, and that's perfectly fine. Because what you do know is that something real is happening in the glow of that monitor. Something stitched from persistence feedback and three-tier pricing models. No fireworks, no fame, just progress. And tonight, progress is enough. You're floating, now not just beside him, but with him somewhere between caffeine flashbacks and JavaScript errors. The days have started blending. Light fades in, fades out. It's all a blur of keyboard clicks, Slack pings, and microwave beeps. He's lost track of which day it is. He hasn't opened his mail in a week. There's a coupon for half-off pizza under a stack of sticky notes. And somewhere buried in the pile, a letter from his internet provider politely reminding him he's 2 weeks behind. Still, his dashboard lives. You watch as he shifts tabs from support tickets to API logs to his bank account. The balance is uninspiring. $823.41. Enough for groceries, not for glory. And yet he smiles. Because this morning someone upgraded. $7. Real revenue. Unprovoked. No discount code, no email nudge. Just someone choosing to pay. And here's your financial principle. For tonight, proof of concept beats potential. Plenty of people have million-dollar ideas. Almost nobody has a user who pulled out a credit card. He adds the transaction to a hand-drawn chart on the wall. It's just a line, barely a hill, but it exists. You might think he celebrates by sleeping. No. He celebrates by fixing bugs at 3 a.m., like all emotionally stable people do. And as he tweaks the settings panel for the third time, you hear him mutter something surreal. I think I might be onto something. There's a kind of fragile confidence in that line. Not a declaration, just a possibility. But sometimes that's all you need. You remember, Section 2. The dental plan he ghosted. Well, the job offer expired. He checks the email again just for closure. A red banner says, "Position filled." He stares at it, sips his lukewarm tea and shrugs. It doesn't sting anymore. You know why? Because he's already built something someone paid for. And you can't put a price on that. Well, actually, you can. It's $7, but it feels like $1 billion. Now, for your fringe anecdote, in 2013, a Norwegian man discovered he had purchased 5,000 bitcoins years earlier for about $27 and forgotten about it. When he checked again, they were worth over $800,000. He used a portion to buy an apartment. The rest he held. Sometimes the future rewards the forgetful. You hover as our coder updates his changelog. Nothing fancy, just a note. Added export feature. User 004 asked for it. Hope it helps. This is what passes for celebration in his world. New commits, polite release notes, and a half-hearted fist pump. Economists still debate the inflection point in SaaS businesses when they flip from fragile to unstoppable. Some argue it's 10K in MRR. Others say it's when users start referring other users without being asked. But our misfit coder, he thinks it happens when you stop checking if it's real and start expecting it to grow. It's a mental pivot more than a financial one. You glide gently as he launches a blog for the product. Nothing wild. Just one post titled, "Why I Built This and Why It's Probably Not For You." It's honest, blunt, vulnerable in the way only someone with nothing to lose can afford to be. And someone shares it. Just one retweet, but still. And that one retweet leads to 12 new visits and 2 new signups. One of whom also upgrades to paid. Another $7. He could cry, but instead he just sits still, eyes closed, mouth slightly open. The silence says more than any party ever could. There's something sacred about the first time a stranger values your work, not your resume, not your profile, just the thing you made. It rewires you. You sink deeper into the dream beside him. Your breath slow your thoughts, soft. The room fades into something warmer, safer. A little messier, yes, but real. He leans back, spins once in his squeaky chair, and says to no one in particular, "Okay, let's see how far this thing can go." And just like that, the dashboard has a roadmap. Not perfect, but promising, like most things that matter. By now, you don't even float, you drift, as if your limbs are made of string and chamomile. You're weightless, carried gently by the rhythms of someone else's quiet obsession. 3 months have passed since that first sign-up, though you'd never guess from the living room. The stack of La Croix cans is taller. The temporary desk, an old IKEA shelf, is still in use. But something has changed. The air hums with quiet traction. This morning, he opens his dashboard to a tiny new notification. You have reached $100 in monthly recurring revenue. There's no party, no confetti, just a slow, satisfied breath. Like finishing a marathon no one else knew you were running. And here's your financial principle tonight. Recurring revenue compounds like confidence. Every small payment is a brick. You don't build a castle with one stone. You build it with 1,000 little ones, placed consistently lovingly over time. And that's what he's doing. You trail behind him as he walks, yes, actually walks outdoors for the first time in days, just to clear his head, just to feel sun on his keyboard, stiff shoulders. He listens to a podcast about scaling product-led growth. The host says, if people keep asking for features you didn't build, you're probably marketing too broadly. He nods like it's gospel. Back home, he logs into his product again and does something shocking. He deletes half the features. Gone, slashed, cut like bad bangs. Less clutter, more clarity. Because now he knows clarity converts. Confusion churns. And somewhere in those changes, something strange happens. Users thank him for making it simpler, for listening, for not turning it into a bloatware Frankenstein monster. You remember that pricing tier he named Team Magic. It has a user now. A tiny design agency in Portland signed up with a short note. Thanks for making something we actually understand. He reads it 3 times. Not because he's egotistical, but because he needs the proof. It's the emotional vitamin of the SaaS world. And now, for tonight's quirky tale in ancient China, people once used knife-shaped coins, literal metal knives, as currency. The idea was that wealth should always be useful, even in a pinch. So yes, your wallet was a weapon. Nothing like swiping a blade at the market to say, I'd like 2 peaches, please. Back in the living room, our coder turns to his whiteboard and crosses out the word side project. He writes, business. The marker squeaks and he flinches, but he doesn't erase it. Economists still argue about what defines a real business. Is it profitability? Is it scale? Is it the ability to survive a Google algorithm update without collapsing into irrelevance? There's no consensus. But he decides his definition is simple. A business is something that keeps going, even when I want to quit. And that's exactly what this is. He still doubts himself, of course. Every other day he contemplates applying for freelance gigs just to make rent feel less like roulette. He even starts drafting a resume, but the only thing under achievements is built something people didn't hate, which honestly is more impressive than half of LinkedIn. That night, he rewrites his onboarding emails. The subject line: "Hey, welcome. This thing's a bit weird, but it works." His unsubscribe rate drops by 60%, because, as it turns out, authenticity converts too. You feel sleep pressing heavier now, like warm velvet across your forehead. The world slows. Every sound muffled. Every thought syrupy. He adds a founder's notes section to the dashboard. Just a little corner with thoughts, updates, tiny jokes. Today's note reads, "If something breaks, it's probably my fault. I'm trying." People read it. They reply. They send bug reports with emojis and kindness. One even sends a virtual coffee. $5 out of nowhere. He buys a real coffee with it. Tips the barista $2. Then he sits by the window watching people pass. And for once, he doesn't feel like an outsider. Because something he made is moving. Not viral, not booming, but moving forward. And that's enough to keep the lights on. Enough to keep you dreaming. Enough to make a misfit coder believe that maybe, just maybe, he's building more than software. Maybe he's building freedom. And now we begin to slow. The lines between day and night soften like a gradient on a sleepy old website. You're not so much listening anymore. You're gliding gently over the unfolding map of his strange, quiet empire. He wakes with a stiffness in his neck and a message on his phone. It's from Chloe UX Design. You remember her from the early days when there were only 2 users and too many bugs. She says, "Hey, random, but my friend at a small VC is curious about your product." I showed it to her. He reads it twice, then again, then closes the phone and puts it face down like it's radioactive. You see, some people dream of investor calls. Some people plan pitch decks in their sleep. But not him. Not this misfit. Because here's your financial principle tonight. Not all money is good money. He knows that capital comes with strings. And those strings tug and twist and pull you toward meetings and metrics and markets you never meant to chase. He just wanted to solve a problem. And now someone wants to fund it. He thinks about it all day. Buys fancy coffee. Even adds cinnamon. A $1.50 luxury. When you're bootstrapping, that's practically champagne. And here's your quirky money tale. In ancient Ireland, fines were sometimes paid in cows, but a special kind of cow with no blemishes, certain colorings, and a very even temperament. They were called honor cows. So, if you wronged someone, you couldn't just hand over a random angry goat. You had to make it count. Economics, but with moo. Back in his apartment, the sunlight hits the whiteboard just right. You see that single word again. Business. Underlined now. Circled. Believed. He types out a response to Chloe. "Thanks for thinking of me. I'm curious, but cautious. Not sure I'm ready to scale fast." She replies with a simple, "Smart. No pressure. Just possibility." That night, he rewatches a video from an old YC founder who once said, "Do things that don't scale. Talk to every user. Handwrite the emails. Answer the support tickets like your rent depends on it, because it does." And he nods, because his favorite part, it isn't the money, it's the moments. The user who wrote, "This tool saved me hours this week," or the one who said, "I showed this to my co-founder, and we both went quiet for 5 minutes." That's a good sign. Those aren't comments, they're fuel. Economists still debate the emotional ROI of small wins. Can joy be measured per user? Can motivation be charted on a spreadsheet? Maybe not. But founders know every little ping, every Stripe notification, every reply that starts with, "This might be silly, but," is a deposit into your willpower account. He builds until 1:30 a.m. tonight, adds dark mode, then light mode, then a setting to auto-toggle based on the user's time zone, which only 2 people will notice, but still he notices. You might think he's doing too much. You might be right. But this isn't overwork, it's obsession. And obsession, when pointed at the right problem, becomes legacy. You drift now in time with his keyboard. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. Longer pause. The breathing of a product growing stronger by the hour. He doesn't say it aloud, but you can feel it in the way he clicks publish on the new changelog. Some small fixes this week. Also, I'm still here. Thanks for sticking with me. Sleep presses at your edges now. Maybe you're still awake. Maybe you've gone soft and ghostly like vapor trailing behind a comet of someone else's dream. And that's fine. You remember section 4, when he was talking to himself in the chat widget. Now he's talking to users, real users with real needs. He built something from nothing, grew it from a bug-ridden seed into a functioning revenue-generating piece of software, and no one gave him permission, which is why it matters more. No glossy startup press, no viral launch, just quiet compounding, just belief stacked like code blocks, because some things grow best in silence, like roots, like resilience, like dreams. You're barely tethered now. The fabric of the world thins, and everything begins to hum like distant wind chimes on a sleepy porch. But our misfit coder is very much awake. Not jittery or caffeinated, just calmly alive in that curious way a night owl gets when the rest of the world is too quiet to interrupt. It's month 6. MRR, monthly recurring revenue, is inching closer to 4 figures. 983, not on 67 to be exact. That missing 16.33 feels like a personal insult. And here's your financial principle tonight. Momentum isn't magic, it's math. A SaaS business isn't viral by default. It's built layer by layer through feedback loops and friction points. Each bug squashed is a conversion saved. Each support ticket answered with kindness is a referral in disguise. The engine turns slowly until it doesn't. Today, he's building out the billing dashboard. Again, because someone said I wish I could see a little chart of how much we've paid over time. He could have ignored it. Instead, he designs a pastel graph with little milestones. First payment, 100 days as a customer, 1-year badge coming soon. He even adds a thank you line. Your support is paying my rent and feeding my cat. He doesn't have a cat, but he hopes to one day. Maybe one that judges him slightly less than his mirror does. And here's your fringe money. Back to the Yap, people of Micronesia used giant stone discs as currency, some as large as 12 feet across. They couldn't move them, so everyone just remembered who owned which rock. The original blockchain, really. So yes, you could technically be broke while standing next to your fortune. Relatable. Our coder's big, unmovable stone. It's his code base. Heavy. Awkward. But full of value if you know how to maintain it. He spends hours today fixing edge case bugs for one user in Bulgaria. Then she tweets in broken but joyful English. This tool saved our butt today. Thank you to the quiet hero who made it. Quiet hero. He reads it 10 times. Screenshot, save, archive. It's better than caffeine. The revenue ticks up again. Another user on the Team Magic plan. Now, he's over $1,000 MRR. 4 digits. He stares at the number like it might evaporate. Refreshes. Still there. Refreshes again. Still, he walks to the fridge. Finds an unopened bottle of cold brew from 2 weeks ago. Drinks it anyway. Probably fine, he mutters. It isn't, but he'll survive. Now, here comes the strange part. The part where ambition starts to whisper louder than anxiety. He opens a Google Doc, titles it, Things to Build. When I'm not panicking about rent. Item 1. In-app templates. Item 2. Team permissions. Item 3. Cat emoji. Reaction to every update. Vital, he chuckles. The list grows, not just with tasks, but with clarity. Because clarity is what happens when survival stops being the only priority. He checks his email again. A note from someone in France. We used your product to win our first client. Merci. No discount code, no ask. Just a thank you. Economists still debate the true value of customer loyalty. Some say retention matters more than acquisition. Others argue virality trumps all. But solo founders, they know every user who stays is a miracle. Every monthly charge that doesn't cancel is a nod from the universe. Keep going. He adds a section to the site, Wall of Love. User quotes tiny thank yous, quirky bugs reported with emojis. One says, "We broke your app with too many smiley faces. Sorry, but also proud." He laughs and fixes it and pushes the update. At this point, his friends don't ask if he's still working on that little app. They ask how much longer until he quits his consulting gigs for good. He doesn't know yet, because something strange happens when your dream stops being hypothetical. It gets heavier, more real. You don't want to break it. You cradle it like a newborn idea, afraid the world might cough and shatter it. You remember that whiteboard? It has new writing on it now. 5K MRR as hire someone. He underlines it, then draws a little stick figure next to it, holding coffee and smiling. You feel yourself floating closer to sleep, as if every line of code he writes is another lullaby. His quiet effort becomes your comfort. His doubts, familiar, because he still has them. Just this morning, he read a blog post from a founder who scaled to 3 mana ARR, then imploded. Burnout, support, debt. Too many features. Not enough rest. He clicks away from it, then opens his own dashboard. It's messy, but it's his, and that's enough. Here's tonight's final thought, one that lingers like the scent of lavender. Building a quiet business isn't about hiding. It's about choosing what noise to ignore. There's plenty he can't control. Algorithms, platform changes, global recessions. But he can control how he treats his users, how he prices his product, how he responds when something breaks. It's not flashy, but it works. And sometimes that's the best kind of power, the kind nobody sees coming. The late-night glow has a strange energy. There's a softness in it, like the whole world agrees to hush for a while. And in this hush, your misfit coder sits cross-legged on the floor, sipping tea that's probably gone cold, watching line graphs rise by. Just enough to feel like magic, but not so much they scare him. The product is stable now, mostly. Users still find weird edge cases someone in Denmark just tried to upload a 2 GB spreadsheet through a beta form and accidentally triggered a recursive loop. Oops, but he fixes it. Gently, without drama. That's the rhythm of things now. Quiet fires, calm fixes, small wins. And tonight's timeless financial principle is this: sustainable, explosive. It's not sexy. It won't get you on the cover of TechCrunch. But building slow, methodical, thoughtful customer first creates something a lot of startups never reach: resilience. He's resisted temptation too. 2 weeks ago, a stranger DM'd him with a tempting offer. Love your tool. Would love to partner, maybe a cross-sell, with our crypto invoicing suite. He rereads it 5 times. Crypto invoicing. That feels like mixing meditation with monster trucks. He politely declines. And now, for your quirky money moment of the evening. In 17th century Holland, during the infamous tulip mania, a single bulb of the rare Semper Augustus tulip could cost as much as an entire townhouse on the canals. People traded houses for flowers. One man accidentally ate his priceless bulb thinking it was an onion. That's one way to learn about speculative bubbles and the importance of labeling your groceries. Meanwhile, our coder labels every commit, every update, every thought. His changelog is turning into a novella. Fixed the login bug. Finally, you can now stay logged in longer than your cat's attention span. That one got a laugh from someone in a Slack group. Unexpected joy, a ping of connection. Now he's making money. But here's what surprises him most. He's making friends. The early users keep emailing him not with demands, but with ideas. They say things like, "Have you ever thought of adding a time travel toggle?" Or, "I love your font choices." I can tell you care. He does care. And now they do too. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a scary thought keeps floating around. Maybe this is working. Not in a Shark Tank kind of way. Not in a, I sold to Google for $80 million, and now I kite surf kind of way. But in the way where the business pays him back. With money, with energy, with belief. Economists still argue about founder psychology. Some say you need a growth mindset. Others argue for grit. But very few talk about what he's learning. The power of small momentum stacked daily without applause. Because you can build something life-changing while still being unsure. Still wondering if today's bug will be tomorrow's review bomb. But that's the beauty of a quiet SaaS. You don't need a stadium of fans. Just a handful of people who'd genuinely be sad if it disappeared. It's 2:13 a.m. now. He should sleep. Instead, he's on Loom recording a video update for his 76 paying customers. His hair is a mess. His background is a pile of laundry, but his eyes focused. He smiles awkwardly at the camera. "Hey, just wanted to thank you all. I know this isn't perfect, but it's getting better. I really appreciate you choosing this tool over like the 20 flashier ones out there. No corporate Polish, no AI voiceover, just a guy in a shirt from 2014 showing up." He sends it, immediately regrets it, then checks the analytics. 8 people watch it within the hour. 2 reply, "Thanks for being human." You feel yourself melt deeper into the covers, like you're sinking into the code base of his soul. There's something so strangely calming about someone choosing steady progress over explosive fame. He finally turns off the monitor, climbs into bed, stares at the ceiling. His mind won't stop racing with product ideas. A better export flow, user tagging, magic link logins. But he lets the thoughts drift. Because he's earned rest, he whispers to no one. $1,400 MRR. Not bad for a misfit. And somewhere you whisper back, not bad at all. You remember back in Section 1 when this whole thing was just a weird idea built on cheap coffee and late-night self-loathing. Look how far we've come. The code is cleaner. The user base is growing. The panic is softening. It's not an empire, but it's enough. And enough can feel like freedom. Sleep clings to you like a warm hoodie, now soft around the shoulders, barely letting you notice where story ends and dream begins. But he's still going your quiet coder. Somewhere between day job and deep night, he started to believe. Not fully, not loudly, just enough to keep shipping. Today, he does something dangerous. He opens Excel. No, not for taxes. He's not that brave yet. This is his dream math sheet. A kind of napkin math grown up. In cell A1, what if this hit 10K MRR? He lets that idea hang there. Not as a goal, just a possibility. He types formulas, breaks them, tries again. 10K MRR means 120K a year. Replace the day job. Hire one part-timer. Take weekends off, theoretically. Buy the expensive olive oil without guilt. And here's your financial principle tonight. Numbers are only powerful when you give them context. It's one thing to chase 10K MRR. It's another to realize it could mean breathing room, dignity, health insurance, maybe even room for boredom. Because boredom is a luxury now. He hasn't felt bored in over a year. Just then, he gets a support ticket. Not a bug, just a, how do I export my data from someone in Idaho? She says she's using it for her mom's nonprofit. It's working well. Just needs to share it in Excel. Oh, the irony. He writes back warmly, then adds an export to CSV button. Pushes it live in 45 minutes. Emails her back. You're all set. Also, your nonprofit sounds amazing. She replies with a photo of her mom holding a hand-painted thank you sign. Actual photo. Actual paint. He stares at it for a long time. Meanwhile, here's your quirky financial tidbit. In 18th century Russia, they taxed citizens based on the number of windows in their homes. Fewer windows, lower taxes. So people literally bricked up their windows to save money, turning vibrant homes into gloomy caves. The lesson: bad incentives can make smart people do silly things. And sometimes darkness is taxable. Our misfit knows this well. He almost darkened his own metaphorical windows once. Remember Section 3 when he nearly gave up. Now he leaves the metaphorical curtains wide open. Sunshine hits the keyboard. There's dust on the screen. He doesn't care. Something unexpected is happening. People are starting to talk about the product. Not loudly, not on tech Twitter, but in quiet newsletters, niche Slack groups, indie hacker forums where the cool kids hang out. One writes, I've tried 10 tools. This one feels like it was made by someone who gets me. He bookmarks it, adds it to a folder titled Encouragement. That folder is getting very full. Encouragement is its own kind of capital. Not tax deductible, but deeply sustaining. And yet a voice creeps in. What if I scale too fast? What if I can't keep up? This is the dilemma most spreadsheet dreams forget. Growth has costs. More users has more support. More bugs. More edge cases. More feature requests that politely ruin your roadmap. Economists still argue whether the cost of scale is linear or exponential. Founders, they just feel it in their spine. The moment when their peaceful SaaS turns into a screeching production line of unmet expectations. But our coder, he's learning to pace himself. he adds a tiny ideas form in the app. Submissions go to a Notion board. They don't become obligations, just signals. One idea says, add offline mode so I can use this in the mountains. Another says, make it pinker. He smiles at both. He even adds a toggle enable mountain mode. It does nothing. Pure Easter egg. But one user finds it and posts on Reddit. This dev has a soul, and that's the key, isn't it? He's not building software. He's building trust, and trust compounds, just like interest or burnout, depending on how you manage it. Tonight, he walks to the store without checking his dashboard first. No panic. No, just one more deploy. He buys fancy ice cream, the kind with specks of vanilla bean and a paragraph of romantic backstory on the lid. It melts a little on the walk home. That's okay, because this too is progress. He sits on the steps eating the ice cream with a plastic spoon from his drawer of startup utensils. You know, the ones from food delivery apps that you keep just in case. He doesn't think about investors. He doesn't think about exits. He just thinks about the next update and the next user he gets to surprise. You feel it too now. That pull toward smallness done well, toward quiet success, toward the kind of wealth that whispers rather than screams. A breeze pushes in through your cracked window. Maybe you think of your own spreadsheets, your own dream math. What would your 10K MRR mean? Or maybe you don't think at all, just float, because the story is still carrying you gently into softer and softer spaces, and your coder, is still there, still tinkering, still believing just enough. Because sometimes success doesn't roar in with trumpets. It arrives like sleep slow, earned, and long overdue. The night folds in tighter like a weighted blanket of code and possibility. Somewhere, a new user signs up. Somewhere else, someone churns. But our quiet coder, he doesn't flinch anymore. He's built a buffer, financial, emotional, psychological. It's a strange kind of wealth peace of mind. Tonight, he lights a candle before opening his laptop. Not for any mystical reason, just because it smells like sandalwood and makes the keyboard glow like some ancient relic. Like maybe these keystrokes are holy. He doesn't say it out loud, but you feel it with him. This little software thing is becoming sacred. Which brings us to your timeless financial principle. For this section, autonomy is the highest yield. It's not just about money. It's about mornings without alarms, evenings without meetings, the ability to choose what you build, when you build it, and who you build it for. You can't chart that in Excel, but you can feel it in your bones. Tonight, he decides not to ship anything. Instead, he opens the wall of love. A Notion page filled with user thank yous, weird compliments, and bug reports, delivered with unusually kind phrasing. One says, "Your app saved me 3 hours today. I used that time to take my kid to the park." Another, "This is the first software tool that feels like it was made by a tired person or tired people. Thank you." He reads them slowly, like poetry, then closes the tab with a nod. Because the dopamine drip is real, but he doesn't need a fix tonight. Instead, he picks up a used copy of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, flips to a random page. Care and quality are internal and external aspects of the same thing. He underlines it. A real underline with a pen. The coder is healing. You drift deeper into the story, now caught in the gentle rhythm of someone choosing craft over chaos. And now, for your quirky financial moment in ancient Rome. Salt was so valuable, it was used as currency. literally. The word salary comes from salarium, the payments Roman soldiers received to buy salt. Imagine showing up to work and being paid in artisanal sea flakes. Here's your paycheck, don't spill it on the way home. That's the thing about money. Its form changes, but its function, freedom, trust, energy, is timeless. And that's what he's building. A quiet machine that earns money while he rests. Not passively. No, this isn't one of those sleep on the beach while your SaaS mints money fairy tales, but gently, predictably, with enough buffer to take a week off if he needs it. He hasn't yet, but he could. Tonight, he thinks about time differently, about how time isn't just the hours you log, but the energy you preserve. Economists still debate the concept of opportunity cost. It's simple in theory, every yes is a no to something else. But in practice, it's a kaleidoscope of trade-offs. Sleep versus growth support versus scaling ambition versus sanity. He's learning that sometimes rest is the investment. So tonight, instead of building, he journals. Not digitally actual pen on paper. A moleskin he bought on sale and never touched. The first line he writes, "What if this is already enough?" He stares at it for a long time, feels something shift, like he's been running with a pebble in his shoe and finally stopped to shake it out. Meanwhile, his app pings once. Just one Stripe notification. 48 Andersers received. Somewhere someone upgraded. He smiles. Not because of the money, but because of what it means this thing still works while I breathe. He sets down the journal. Pulls on socks because the floor is cold. Wanders to the kitchen. Pours water into the kettle like it's a ceremony. You hear it with him. The hiss of the gas burner. The gurgle of water shifting from stillness to steam. Small wealth. Quiet abundance. He drinks the tea slowly. Rooibos. No caffeine. He's learned. And maybe this is the moment you realize you don't need to go viral to be valuable. You don't need 10,000 customers or 7 figures in ARR. You need just enough margin in your life to think clearly and sleep fully. He's been sleeping better, by the way. Still has weird dreams about malformed Jason and never-ending onboarding flows. But he wakes up, rested, and for the first time in months he notices the birds again. That might be the real win, because somewhere between shipping features and skipping burnout, he became a person again. He texts a friend. "Hey, want to grab lunch tomorrow? My treat. No reason, no occasion. Just because. That's what wealth lets you do." You reach for your blanket, now pulling it tighter. Feeling the hum of this misfit's momentum echo somewhere in your own body. Maybe your SaaS hasn't launched yet. Maybe your dreams are still scribbles on receipts. That's okay. You're here, you're learning, and you're closer than you think. Because sometimes success is just a long walk toward yourself. There's a kind of wealth that doesn't show up in your Stripe dashboard. The kind that looks like walking past your laptop at 10 p.m. and not feeling guilty. Or choosing to spend a whole Saturday on laundry fresh sheets and absolutely zero revenue-generating activity. Your misfit coder is tasting that kind of wealth now. Tonight, he doesn't touch the product. He sits on his couch, yes, the same one with the coffee stain from Section 2, and watches a documentary about Japanese woodworking. He doesn't know why. He just likes watching careful people make precise things. A man in Kyoto is carving a drawer joint so tight it doesn't need glue. The coder leans forward just a bit. Then he whispers almost to himself, "That's what I want my UI to feel like." You see, the real builders always pull metaphors from unexpected places. A good onboarding flow feels like soft lighting in a quiet restaurant. A robust database schema feels like a tree root system. Solid, invisible, non-negotiable. And here's your timeless financial principle for this section. Real value is invisible until it's needed. Just like insurance, or good design, or the humble lint trap in your dryer ignored until it burns the house down. Your misfit is seeing the same pattern in his business. The boring decisions, the ones no one tweets about, are paying off. The boring tests, the boring refactors, the boring pricing page A/B test that quietly added $800 a month. Meanwhile, he's starting to track something new churn. It's humbling. Someone cancels and leaves a comment. Loved it, but going back to Google Sheets. It stings, but not like it used to. He screenshots it anyway, files it under lessons, retention. You see, he's starting to think like a systems builder now. Not just a product person. Not just a coder. He's realizing that every user isn't just a person, they're a process. With a story, a life cycle, a mood. And here comes your quirky financial anecdote. In 14th century China, some merchants used flying money, a paper promissory note backed by regional offices, to avoid the risk of carrying coins across bandit-filled roads. Imagine trusting a napkin with your life savings because some guy in another province promises it's real. That was the beginning of distributed trust. And isn't SaaS just that a quiet bet that this button, this cloud, this stranger will still be there in the morning? Your coder doesn't take that lightly. He starts a habit. Every Friday, he writes one new help doc. Not sexy, not scalable. But when you're sleepy and trying to figure out a setting at 11 p.m., it's a lifeline. One user writes, "Thank you for the simple tutorial. You saved my Monday." He adds that one to the wall of love. And now, the uncertainty. He's wondering whether to raise prices. He's resisted, partly out of fear, partly out of loyalty to his early adopters. But now, costs are creeping in. Support volume is rising. That 10K MRR he dreamed of back in Section 10, he's brushing against it. But MRR isn't the whole story. Profit matters, and his margins are starting to whisper. Economists still debate whether price elasticity in SaaS follows linear decay, or whether there's a psychological cliff, a price point, beyond which conversion plummets. Turns out, human psychology is not a spreadsheet. So he tests it, adds a new plan, same features, higher, price priority support, and a heartfelt note that reads, "This plan helps fund the solo dev who made this tool. If that feels worth it to you, I'd be honored." He expects backlash. Instead, 3 people upgrade the first day. One leaves a note, gladly paying more, keep going. That night, he doesn't celebrate. He just exhales. Because sometimes progress sounds like less anxiety. You nestle deeper, now wrapped in this strange little tale that's part bedtime story, part business parable. And maybe you start to feel your own price creeping upward, not in dollars, but in dignity. What are you worth? Not your hourly rate, not your stack of receipts, your attention, your energy, your late nights and early doubts. There's no easy answer, but the coder is starting to find his. He updates his landing page to reflect the new price, then closes the laptop. No fanfare, no launch tweet, just a long, quiet walk in the cold evening air. He passes a bakery, smells fresh bread and smiles, not because he can afford it now, but because he finally believes he deserves it. You do too. So tonight, don't worry about your roadmap. Don't worry about your list. Let your thoughts drift like flying money on a breeze of trust. You're investing in the invisible, And it's compounding, quietly, like it always does. Rain whispers at the window now, just soft enough to ignore, just rhythmic enough to remember. The kind of rain that makes you think in metaphors. Or maybe metaphors are the rain. Tonight, the misfit coder lies in bed, staring at the ceiling doing math in his head. Not the usual kind. No revenue projections. No churn rates. He's calculating time. If support takes 6 hours a week, and writing takes 4, and updates take 12, what's left for being a human? And how do you budget for joy? You've heard of runway in startup lingo. How many months until you burn through your cash? But now, he's thinking about lifespan runway. How many creative days he gets in a lifetime. The answer, even optimistically, is finite. So tonight, he writes fewer lines of code, but better ones. Because here's your timeless financial principle for this stretch of story. Quality compounds silently. That bug you don't fix today becomes a support ticket tomorrow, and a refund the next week, and a bad review by the end of the quarter. But the doc, you write now. The UI, you polish just once. The automation you finally wire together. Those pay you back forever. That's compounding. Not in capital, but in energy. And speaking of compounding, here's your quirky money moment. In 19th century France, a banker named Albert de Rothschild made a fortune off silence. He'd pay couriers not to deliver rumors about his trades, ensuring fewer market swings. He didn't just trade stocks, he traded quiet. And tonight, your coder's building the same thing, a buffer of calm. He's reworking a support autoresponder to say, "Hey, I'm a solo dev and might take a little longer to reply, but I always do. Thanks for your patience." No AI signatures, no fake team names, just honesty. And users, they like it. Because here's the thing most founders forget. Clarity feels like competence. Now the uncertainty. He's considering hiring, not a co-founder, just a contractor. Maybe someone to help with support, or with testing, or with the 1,000 little gremlins that sneak into your week and chew through your focus. But that means letting go of control. And he's built this thing pixel by pixel, like a monk stacking stones. Economists still argue whether hiring early in a solo SaaS journey accelerates or dilutes the vision. Some say delegate to scale. Others argue wait until it hurts. He's somewhere in between, sore but stubborn. So he puts up a tweet, looking for a kind, detail-obsessed person to help me care for this little product. 5 hours, week. Quietly vital. He closes Twitter immediately. Doesn't check replies for 24 hours. When he finally does, he's shocked. 30 messages. None of them bros. Most from thoughtful, weirdly overqualified people who say things like, "Your landing page made me feel seen," and "I like the way you wrote your help docs." He smiles. Because maybe his vibe is the filter. And now he's thinking about legacy, not the castle building kind, but the what's left behind when I log off kind. He spends the evening reviewing onboarding flows, pretending he's a user again, clicking through every menu like it's the first time. He catches a typo on the FAQ, fixes it, adds a subtle animation to the save button, just enough to feel alive, and adds one more step to the welcome tour. Built by a tired human for other tired humans, you're in good company. No upsells, no call to action, just a welcome. Because that's what money actually buys you. The chance to make someone else's day 3% better. And if you stack enough of those, that's a legacy. You're deeper now, sleepier, but not lost, not gone. Still tethered to the story like a kite string in the fog. You think of the other night when he journaled. What if this is already enough? Tonight, he writes something else. What if it could be even gentler? That's the new roadmap. Not more features, not more noise, more softness, more clarity. Because growth is addictive, but grace is sustainable. He closes the journal, rinses his tea mug, wipes down the sink. Not because it needs it, but because it's his. That might be the richest moment of his day. Not the sale, not the code, the pause, the knowing that no one is waiting on him tonight. That the app is working. The support queue is clear. The story continues. And so do you. You hear the soft buzz of a distant street lamp. Or maybe it's just the hum of your thoughts slowing down. The story still spins gently like a mobile above a crib. And somewhere within it, the misfit coder is deciding something he never thought he'd consider. He's thinking about acquisition. Not in the Silicon Valley 100x multiple champagne in the kitchen kind of way, but more like, could someone else carry this torch? You see, he's not tired of the product. He's just learning to respect his own rhythm. A user sends him a message. I love this app. It's like a quiet friend that never lets me down. And that message makes him pause, because maybe that's all he ever wanted to build. A quiet friend. Here's your timeless financial principle for this section. Exit isn't failure or success. It's timing. Sometimes selling a business isn't about cashing out. It's about knowing when your energy has shifted and allowing the next phase of the story to unfold without resentment. He walks through the park one cold afternoon, letting the idea settle in like winter air in his lungs. If he sold, would the new owner change everything? Would users leave? Would he regret it? There's no spreadsheet for that. No net present value of peace. He listens to an episode of Acquired where the founders talk about selling too late, about holding on until the spark fades, about watching your baby grow bitter, and he thinks, maybe better to leave while it's still beautiful. That night, he drafts a short email to a small SaaS acquisitions firm. Not a marketplace, not a frenzy. Just, hey, built this calm little tool. Thoughtful user base. Steady MRR. Might be open to a conversation. He doesn't send it, just saves it, like a backup plan. Like an emergency parachute made of typed-out feelings. Now, your quirky financial anecdote. In medieval Venice, merchants invented early double-entry bookkeeping to handle trade that took months across oceans. Each ledger entry had a twin. Not just credit and debit, but presence and memory. Every trade had a shadow. Every choice a counterpoint. That's what he's feeling now, the shadow of success. Not burnout, not boredom, just the awareness that every yes has a no behind it. And the biggest yes of his last 3 years has been this product. But maybe it's time for a new one. Or no product at all. He revisits his early notes, those chaotic sketches from Section 3. And he laughs. Because the dreams back then were so loud. 50K MRR by year 2. Hire a team by Q3. Build a dashboard users obsess over. Now, the goal is quieter. Sleep well. Reply kindly, don't rush. He meets a founder, friend for tea, yes, tea now, not coffee. And they talk shop. But it's slow talk, gentle talk. Like two monks comparing garden layouts. And the friend says, you could probably 3x revenue with some clever pricing. And the misfit coder nods, smiles, sips, and doesn't reply. Because sometimes growth is the wrong metric. Sometimes what you really want to measure is friction. How hard does your life feel? And right now, his feels like an old sweater, slightly stretched, still warm. You may feel it too in your own way, the nudge that maybe you don't need more clients, just better ones. Or not more projects, just quieter hours. This is the paradox you build for freedom, then get trapped in the machine you made, like a Rube Goldberg loop of your own ambitions. Economists still argue whether small business ownership produces more net happiness than employment. The data is muddy. Some say it's about control. Others say it's about meaning. But your coder, he thinks it's about fit. He built something that fits his shape. And for now, that's enough. So he decides not to sell, at least not this month. Instead, he schedules a month off, not a sabbatical, just a slow January. He writes a note to users, "Hi friends, taking a bit of time to rest and reflect. The app will run as usual. Support might be slower. Thank you for being part of this quiet little journey." He expects complaints. Instead, he gets replies like, "So happy for you. Enjoy the time well earned. This is why I love your work." He tears up, and that night, for the first time in months, he doesn't dream of bugs, dashboards, or graphs. He dreams of a bookstore, a small one, where nothing costs more than $7, and every book smells like possibility. Maybe someday he'll open it, but not yet. Tonight, you curl further into your blanket, and somewhere between the ledger in Venice and the email unsent you realize something. You're not falling asleep. You're being returned to yourself, quietly, one word at a time. You feel it now, that smooth tapering of momentum like a train slowing before the station. No jolt, no screech, just the soft roll of wheels over well-worn track. The story, like the app, was never meant to impress, only to serve, and maybe to soothe. Your misfit coder is watching the sun rise. He didn't stay up all night working, he just woke up early, on purpose. There's chamomile in his mug and a page open in his journal, blank but not empty, because now he's not writing from stress. He's writing from stillness. The app hums quietly in the background. Revenue steady. Users supported. Nothing explosive. Nothing broken. Just calm. It didn't go viral. It didn't get funded. It didn't make TechCrunch. It made breakfast easier for 3,000 people in 80 countries. And somehow that's wilder. Here's your final, timeless financial principle. Enough is a number, but also a decision. At some point, the game becomes diminishing returns. The dopamine stops arriving, but the maintenance doesn't. That's when most founders start chasing. Your coder, he lets go. He sets a cap on growth. Literally. He adds a wait list to the sign-up flow, taking new users slowly to preserve quality. Thank you for your patience. A few people complain. Most don't, because the people who resonate with this kind of product understand restraint, understand intentional scarcity, understand that scaling trust is different than scaling servers. You may be wondering, did he ever hit 1 million? Well, not all at once, but over time, yes. Not in headlines, not in one glorious exit, but in cumulative receipts, in months that stacked quietly, in striped payouts that felt less like winnings, more like affirmation. Your final, quirky financial anecdote. In the 1600s, Japanese merchants would seal deals by folding paper cranes together, a ritual that symbolized shared trust. No signature, no stamp. Just a slow, coordinated movement of hands. The business of origami. That's what your coder has built. A folded crane passed between strangers. Every new user who signs up now gets a little animation, a paper bird unfolding. No one notices it consciously, but they feel it. And now, the final uncertainty. What next? He could build a new product, write a book, teach, disappear. There's no plan, only drift. Because the biggest lesson wasn't in SaaS. It was in self-regulation. In learning that ambition isn't wrong, but it needs a bedtime. He now keeps a post-it on his desk. Grow gently, exit slowly, sleep deeply. You've walked with him through all of it. The ramen nights, the absurd optimism, the rubber chicken economy, the DMs that hit too hard, the wins that arrived quietly. And maybe now, as the last threads of wakefulness loosen, you realize the point was never to make $1 billion. It was to become the kind of person who doesn't need to. You settle finally, knowing the product is still live, still serving, still being quietly, stubbornly good. Not perfect, just well-shaped. Like a drawer joint so tight it doesn't need glue. And somewhere in that code base, there's a comment he wrote just for himself. You did good. Go take a walk. So he does, and so do you, even if it's just through sleep, even if it's just through dreams. Because the real ROI was never money, it was rest. The story slows now, like breath before stillness, like dusk on a hill where no one's watching. Let yourself feel the echo of it all. The soft glow of lessons folded gently into memory. You don't need to remember everything, just enough. Just the weightlessness of knowing you're allowed to want less, to do less, to build slowly, to step gently. The world won't fall apart if you pause. In fact, it might fall into place. Let the metaphors go. Let the metrics sleep. No one's refreshing the dashboard tonight. The support tickets can wait. The roadmap isn't a race. You are not behind. You are not late. You are a quiet builder of apps, of lives, of your own sense of calm. And tonight, you are off the clock. Let your mind drift like a paper crane on a slow current. There is no urgency here. No pitch, no launch, just a soft space where ambition and ease shake hands. Remember the gold coin you dropped back in section 2. It's still spinning. You didn't lose it. You invested it into rest, into self-trust, into the strange sacred art of enough. So close your eyes now. Let the lights dim. Let the code run without you. And sleep like someone who's already arrived.